There's a question that sounds naive, and yet it's one of the deepest you can ask in this whole story. Who decides what the right number is? When you're told that your bad cholesterol, the LDL, should stay below a certain threshold, where does that threshold come from? Is it carved into nature like the temperature at which water boils, or is it a choice made by people in a room at a particular moment in history? It's the second one. And understanding how that number has moved over time explains a great deal. Let's take a step back. For decades, experts have gathered, looked at the available studies and proposed reference values. Cholesterol should stay below this, above that, and you'd be wise to do something. So far, nothing strange, it's the normal work of medicine. What's striking is the direction of the movement. Over time, the threshold didn't stay put and it didn't climb back up. It came down. Each revision of the guidelines tended to lower the bar, and lowering the bar means something very concrete. Every time, millions of people who until the day before were considered healthy suddenly found themselves on the side of those who should be treated. Take a documented case, worth telling you in full because it's instructive. In 2004, in one of the most important cardiology journals in the world, Circulation, a group of experts led by Grundy published an update to what were called the ATP3 guidelines. In that update, 2 new targets appeared, 2 new thresholds lower than the ones before. For people at very high risk, it was suggested to bring LDL down even below 70. For those at moderate to high risk, below 100. Numbers lower than anything that had been said before. Now, a point worth getting precise. Those 2 targets were presented as optional, not as obligations, not as the new law of cardiology, as options, reasonable choices for the doctor in certain selected patients. The authors wrote it clearly. It matters that you know this, because people who tell this story crudely often forget this nuance, and the nuance counts. Those numbers were born as options, not as a decree handed down from above. But look at what happens in real life when a lower number enters circulation. Even when it's born as an option, it has a gravity all its own. It becomes the reference everyone talks about, the value that shows up on lab reports, the figure the patient fixes in their head. And as you go lower, the population that falls below normal widens. It's one thing to say that someone with LDL above 160 should worry. It's another to say below 70, because at that threshold you sweep in people who by any older measure would have been considered perfectly fine. Lowering the threshold, all by itself, without anyone getting sicker, turns a huge mass of healthy people into potential patients. And here comes the part that should make your antennae go up, but calmly, without sliding into conspiracy. There's a study that looked at exactly this, how expert groups, when they gather to redefine diseases, tend to shift the boundaries. Moynihan and his colleagues published it in PLOS Medicine in 2013. They examined 16 of these publications, covering 14 different conditions, and the result is striking in its regularity. When a panel changes the definition of a disease, it almost always widens it. 10 times they widen the boundaries, only once did they narrow them. The direction is almost always the same, toward more people inside. The same work looked at another thing, documented and worth facing squarely. On average, about 3/4 of the members of those panels had declared ties with industry, that is, financial relationships with the makers of the drugs or tests linked to that disease. And there's a detail that weighs more than all the rest. Almost none of those groups had bothered to assess the harms of the widening. That is, they decided to include more people in the territory of the disease, but no one asked how much harm it might do to those people to be labeled sick and to end up in treatment. I want you to hold together 2 things that seem contradictory but aren't. On one hand, lowering a threshold can save real lives. For someone at genuinely high risk, for someone who has already had a heart attack, For someone living with familial hypercholesterolemia, bringing LDL very low is not a statistical whim, it's medicine that works, and on this there's no serious debate. On the other hand, the same gesture applied to everyone, indiscriminately, moves millions of healthy people into a to-be-treated category without anyone having measured how much that shift truly helps them. The truth isn't in rejecting thresholds, it's in always asking, who is this threshold for and how much? Moynihan's study, I should warn you, was about diseases in general, not just cholesterol. It's a mechanism, not a specific accusation. But that's exactly why it's precious. It gives you the glasses to read every future revision of the thresholds with adult curiosity, not with fear. When you hear that the new ideal value is even lower, don't panic and don't get angry. Simply ask who decided it, on what evidence, and whether anyone also counted the costs. And as always, one thing I want carved in stone: no number on a lab report is a good reason to change your therapy on your own. If these thoughts have sparked a question in you, take it to your doctor, talk it through together, look at your own case. In the next chapter, we step inside the factory of evidence. We go and see who pays for the studies that decide what's true and why that matters more than you might imagine.